On today's show, who are the prospects to watch at this year's U18 World Championship? We'll get into that on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi, usually joined by Sebastian Freij. We're both directors of scouting at Galvas Prospects. Fortunately, Sebastian is sick right now. Hope you all wish him well. On today's show, it's going to be just me, and we're going to be breaking down the prospects to watch at the U18 World Championships. We'll start off with Canada and USA in our first segment, move on to teams Sweden, Finland, and Czechia in our second segment, and in our third segment, we'll break down Slovakia and the other nations at the tournament, including Switzerland, Norway, Latvia, all that good stuff. Before we get into any of that, today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next, what you thought of the episode, who you're excited to watch at this U18 Worlds rather. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to leave us a rate and review. Helps out the channel a lot. And make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get things started right away here with Team Canada's standout prospects, the players to watch at this U18 World Championship. And I think the conversation starts with Iginla, the son of Jarome Iginla, eligible for the 2024 NHL Draft. We've talked about him a ton. I talked about him yesterday. Just a fantastic board battler, player who consistently gets off the board and makes plays in open ice. Is really, really good at taking uncertain scenarios and turning them into certain chances. That's really what he excels at the end of the day. He's got a fantastic shot. He's definitely a goal scorer first. You don't score 47 goals in 60 games in the WHL without having that scorer's mindset and a good shot. And he's definitely got that. But it's the way he scores his goals, the way he mans in transition, the way that he opens up passing lanes for his teammates. He does so many small things really, really well, and that's why he's a slam dunk top 10 pick in my opinion. There's just so much to love in his game. Moving on to the other player for Team Canada that I think you guys should be looking out for, Gavin McKenna, a winger who plays for the Medicine Hat Tigers in the WHL. Will be playing for Team Canada at this tournament. He's a 2026 NHL draft eligible, and he's been shattering records in the WHL, kind of matching Connor Bedard's pace of scoring at the same age as a 15, 16-year-old in that league. He's definitely got to step up because he's going to be one of the older players in the 2026 NHL draft. It's a pretty early birthday for that draft class. But the skill level's off the charts. I mean, this is a player who just does so well in transition, is so comfortable with the puck on his stick. He's just chock full of skill and pace and energy. Every time he gets the puck, something dangerous happens or is about to happen. That's just the nature of Gavin McKenna. And lastly, for Canada, I want to highlight a defenseman. I think that Charlie Elick, right-handed defenseman, big right-handed defenseman, is going to be an exciting player to watch at this tournament. Mainly because he's almost definitely going to be their top pair defenseman at this tournament, especially given the type of player that they usually give minutes to. Elick fits the bill completely. He's a really good shutdown defenseman, but a really mobile defenseman for his size. He's able to get around the ice fairly well. He's comfortable in transition. Can make a really good breakout pass. I don't see much in terms of standout skill in this game, in terms of that bona fide puck skill that can separate him from other defensemen in this type that usually go pretty high in the draft. There's a defenseman on Team Canada that I'm personally a bit more excited about in Harrison Brunick, who I have ranked higher than Charlie Elick. But I can almost guarantee that Brunick is going to be on that second pair with Elick on that first. That's an almost definite for me. There's a high likelihood of that happening, and it's because of the way that Charlie Elick plays. Elick's a lot more dependable, a bit more reliable in his own zone for sure. But for me, the standouts of Brunick are just amazing. When he gets going in the offensive zone, when he's trying things, when he uses a high-end stick handling, I think he's a better defenseman with higher upside. But Elick is just where he's at in his progression so far, given what Canada needs at this U18 Worlds. He's going to be playing top minutes for them for sure. Moving on to Team USA, we'll look at three standouts from their lineup as well. It's not really complicated for Team USA. They're just taking their NTDP lineup and going with it. That's what they usually do. So we're likely going to see the likes of Cole Eiserman, Cole Hudson, James Higgins, the usual. Those are going to be the three highlights on today's show. James Higgins, for me, is a big standout. I'm really excited to see him at this tournament. He's a dynamic, skillful, puck-carrying center who can do everything you want from him offensively. And he has the energy to get back and make defensive plays as well. A lot of the times, he was the one bailing out Cole Eiserman on some mistakes, that kind of stuff. Like, he's got really good defensive acumen, surprisingly, for a player of this kind of caliber, of this kind of mold. He's just chock full of skill, dynamism, pace, energy. He's got it all for me in terms of the prospects available for the 2025 NHL draft, because he won't be eligible for this draft, only for the next. And yeah, for me, he's almost definitely going to be the first player off the board. It's going to be the number one pick in the 2025 draft, unless something major changes. The skill level of Higgins is just off the charts, and it has to be respected. And yeah, he has all the tools to be the difference maker for USA at this tournament, but we'll see, because Cole Eiserman, when he is on, is an amazing player. He's a pretty big. I mean, he's built like a tree stump a bit. He's 6 foot, 195, 200 pounds. He's definitely got the frame of an NHLer. But I see him a lot more as a move off the puck and shoot the puck type of scorer. Not necessarily the type of guy who's going to drive the net consistently, drop the shoulder, go to the net. But what he does so well. He's the best goal scorer in the 2024 NHL draft. We've said it a lot. It's not even close. His shot is ridiculous. His off-puck movement is really fun to watch when he's focusing on finding the right pockets in the offensive zone, positioning himself off-puck to receive those pucks in the slot and take those shots. Not a lot of prospects can do that like he does either. But the shot is really the difference maker for Eiserman, and should be the factor that kind of elevates him, if it does, at this tournament into, team of the tournament status. If there's somebody that's going to put him in that status, it's going to be the goals that he's going to score. It's going to be the half-wall option for Team USA. It's going to be the guy that's trusted in the last minutes of the game in order to score a goal when you're down by one. Definitely going to be the guy that everyone looks to set up, because, again, his shot is it's a difference maker when he's on. And lastly, for Team USA, we've got Cole Hudson, the younger brother of Lane Hudson, also an undersized left-handed defenseman playing for the NTDP in his draft year. There's a lot of similarities there, but for me, at the end of the day, with Cole Hudson, what the difference maker will be in this game, in this U18 World Championship, will be that ability to find anyone, anywhere in the offensive zone. His creativity and his understanding of how to create offense in the offensive zone is great. It's fantastic. I have a lot of doubts about the rest of the game. His skating isn't as poppy or dynamic as Lane Hudson's was, especially in terms of left to right shiftiness from the blue line. It's not as polished as Hutchins is. And especially the skating deficiencies really show up defensively. This is a player who struggles to get back on time, to retrieve pucks, to break out the puck efficiently, because he's often having to scramble to pucks and kind of figure his way out of problems on the fly, rather than having a sound base of tools that can get him out of trouble pretty consistently. And yeah, it's for me, in terms of the defensemen that are going to be at this tournament, I also want to highlight Logan Hensler for Team USA. At this U18 Worlds. He's going to be really, really interesting to watch, because he's a 2025 NHL draft eligible, probably the top defenseman in the 2025 draft. We'll get to that in a second. There's another candidate for sure. But for me, the upside with Logan Hensler is great. He's a fantastic two-way defenseman. He does everything. He does a bit of everything really good. Defensively, positions himself well. The stick work's great. He's pretty physical along the boards when he wants to. Mainly, it's stick work. It's kind of shepherding players to the boards, taking them out of the middle of the ice. He does that really well. He's really good at turning defensive scenarios into offensive scenarios with a bunch of great tools. His breakout passing is great. His transition skills really good. He's able to kind of convert scenarios really quickly and understands how to do that really, really well. His understanding of the game's high end. So we're talking about a smart, fluid skating, two-way defenseman. There's so much to love and so much that can work at this tournament. This is the usual type of prospect that even as an underage player in these tournaments, tends to stand out because of those tools. They're separating factors, really. But that wraps things up for our first segment about Team Canada and Team USA. We'll get into Sweden, Finland, and Czechia in just a second, but just before, a quick word from our sponsors at Indeed. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. And you can give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, Indeed is the best place to get it done. They've got a bunch of tools to help you find the right candidates for your job, and that's what makes them the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. One of their best features really is Instant Match. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and then you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have job requirements. Indeed, for me, as someone who's used it to find a job, has been really useful. It's really user-friendly. There's no surprises. You know exactly what you're getting out of the job. The job description's great, and again, sometimes you get offers from employers looking for people that have your type of qualities, which is great. So start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through March 31st. So just go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim your $75 job credit. Terms and conditions apply, but if you need to hire, you need Indeed. Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment, we'll be looking at teams Sweden, Finland, and Czechia for the U18 World Championships and the players you should be watching out for in this tournament. So we'll start off with Sweden here, and we'll start off with a pair of defensemen that played together with Växjo in the J20 league in Sweden. That's going to be Sahling, Wallenius, and Alfons Freij. It's no surprise these are the two top Swedish defensemen in the 2024 NHL draft, and they're well worth a shout. For me, I prefer Alfons Freij, and I know for a fact that Sebastian does as well. He pushed hard to have him in our top 20 at Dalbert Prospects, and I mean, he can tell you all about him, but I know him fairly well as well. Just a very, very mobile puck mover. He's a pure puck-moving defenseman. His ability to shift players with his skills, to get around opponents really easily, to beat the first wave before checking, to get into open ice in order to kind of make his job a little easier when he's looking for options, is really good. He's great at ridding himself with pressure. I think that's the main standout with Freij's game. Great stick handler, decent shot. The passing really stands out for me as well. The ability to break lines with his passing is great. He plays a bit like a quarterback at times, definitely plays that role on the power play. And his skating actually carries him really well in the defensive zone. It's been on and off. There have been, spans of time where he's been the best defenseman in terms of pure defensive ability on his team, and other games where he's been the worst. So that's really fluctuating, and it really does depend on his reads, his level of opposition, and all that. I feel like as the opposition is ramped up, we've seen a bit more faltering in his ability to read the game at a high level offensively, rather defensively. But at the end of the day, this is a player who has a great foundation of skills and has a great opportunity to stand out massively at this tournament. And to go to Sahling Wallenius, I think that the profile is a bit the same. He looks bigger on the ice for sure than Alfons Freij. They're listed at about the same size and weight, but I'm pretty sure Sahling Wallenius is a bit bigger and a bit heavier. He definitely looks that way. He's just as good a skater for me as Alfons Freij. The two are neck and neck in terms of skating ability. There's no real gap there. I think the gap is for sure in Sahling Wallenius' ability to read the offensive game. He's definitely a player who leans offensively, for sure. But I feel like Freij has a definite step up on him in terms of his ability to break lines with his passing, to skill through opponents. Sahling Wallenius is also able to, but does it at a lower level, in my opinion. And the defensive game for me with Sahling Wallenius has been, instead of being sometimes good, sometimes really good, sometimes really bad, it's just been consistently below average. Not the worst in the world, not the best in the world, but just consistently at that below average level where I just want to see a tiny bit more defensive ability from Sahling Wallenius. But overall, we'll see how that develops for them at this tournament. I think that both will have a great opportunity to play some big minutes. They'll probably both end up on the top pair, which would be really interesting to watch at this tournament. A couple other standouts for Sweden. We have Lucas Pettersson, who's a speedy, dynamic, and very energetic player who's been pretty much the best player in the Junior 20 League this season. And he's eligible for the 2024 NHL Draft. Sebastian's a big fan. I'm not as sold. I see a bit of a lack of high-end upside with him. I don't see the level of skill in order to make a top six. But I think he's a pretty much a lock to be a bottom six player, given his combination of pace, energy, and defensive understanding. I think that's a great foundation to build off of. And that's no knock on him. I mean, he could be a first rounder, especially if a contender's looking for this type of player, a player who brings pace, energy, and defensive ability to the game. For sure, take a knock on him. if you talk to Sebastian, we'll talk about his playmaking. I'm not as sold, but we'll see how that develops as the years go on. But he's going to be really interesting to watch at this tournament. And I do want to highlight a 2025 NHL draft eligible Victor Eklund. Now, he's still up in the air. He's competing in the finals right now in the Hockey Allsvenskan, which is Sweden's second division of pro hockey. And he's been playing some really good hockey. If he doesn't make the tournament, because he's on their short list, if he doesn't make the tournament, it's going to be after the group stage. He's probably going to join for the medal games, but he's still a very interesting player. If he does end up joining, whether that's early or late, he's going to be a very interesting player to watch. The dynamic ability, the shiftiness is really impressive. And if you recognize the last name, he's William Eklund's younger brother, and he's been looking fantastic so far in Sweden. And I'm really excited to see if he does play at this tournament, what kind of role he'll be in. Because I think he could be a top 6 player for sure. He's got the dynamic play, the pace, the ability for sure. He reminds me a lot of William Eklund, but just a right-handed version of him. Moving on to Finland, we've got a name I've been really excited to watch since the start of the year. We haven't gotten any tape on him since September. It is Aron Kiviharju, the dynamic and great breakout passing left-handed defenseman who's been pretty much injured the whole year, but we're finally going to get a look at him at this tournament. I'm really excited. He's a captain of Team Finland. And again, it's been a while since we've watched him, but the breakout passing, the ability to identify passing lanes coming out of his zone, I think is best in the draft. It's just outside of that, there's been a lot of concerns. His defensive game is hit or miss. His skating's really, really good, but he doesn't use it defensively as well as I think he could. And he lacks that kind of that booming shot from the point that you'd like to see from top 10, top 15 defensemen. But he's on the verge of making the first round. If he can make a splash at these U18 Worlds, I think he can get in there for sure. Another 2024, well, 2 other 2024 NHL draft eligibles to look for at this tournament. Emil Hemming, a big right-handed right wing, playing in the Pro League in Finland and doing a pretty good job of it. He's kind of settled into a defensive role, but when he gets going, his shot is ridiculous. He's able to shoot from pretty much anywhere and put it in the corner. He's got one of the best shots in the 2024 NHL draft, so definitely a player to look out for. And Atos Koivu is the last player I want to mention regarding Finland. He's the son of Saku Koivu, Habs legend, a player who is iconic to the game if you're Finnish or if you're a Habs fan. And Atos Koivu is very much a half-wall power play shooter. He's definitely settled into that role in the junior league in Finland. But I see a bit of upside in terms of his ability to shift players, to get into the middle, to make plays under pressure. There's a lot to love there. So I think that he can make a splash at this tournament and kind of solidify himself as a potential top 50 pick, because he's outside of most top 50s right now. And lastly, for Czechia, the big standout for me is Adam Benyak, who was the best player at the Holinka Gretzky Cup for Czechia and one of the best players of the tournament overall. Benyak is just so dynamic, so skilled. He's got the creativity, the inventiveness that you like to see from these dynamic and skilled forwards. I think he can make a big splash at this tournament. I mean, this is a player who I've seen try the Michigan. I've seen him go between the legs to the backhand and kind of saucer it across. He's got so much creativity and dynamism in this game. He's going to be really interesting to watch. On defense, a player I want to highlight for Czechia who's eligible for the 2024 NHL draft is Tomas Galvas, a really good, dynamic left-handed blue liner, kind of undersized, but plays to his size really well. His stick positioning defensively is really good. He's really good at breaking up pucks. He's really good at spinning off of pressure and getting off the boards with the puck, which is something I really look for with undersized defensemen. He's got a lot of the tools that I like in undersized blue liners, and for me, with Tomas Galvas, you're looking at a top 50 pick for sure. I don't know if that's going to go down that way on draft day, but I'm sold on him as a top 50 pick. He's a borderline first rounder for me. He's really, really good. And lastly, for Czechia, we're going to look at Adam Växjo, a big center slash winger playing in the WHL this season with the Edmonton Oil Kings. And I'm not as sold on his skill set. I know a lot of people have him in kind of the top 40, top 50. I see him as a player I would start looking at outside the top 50, but we know how much size is important for NHL teams. For me, with Växjo, you're looking at a player who has a decent shot in movement. I think that's the main stand-up for him in terms of puck skills, but outside of that, I have a lot of questions. With Växjo, you're looking at a player who can protect pucks really well at this level currently in the WHL, but I'm looking at his mechanics along the boards, his mechanics when he's pressured, and I have more questions than answers regarding that. That's all. But overall, I think that his combination of size and his shot and his ability to handle younger players is something that can really put him as a standout for Czechia in this tournament. So I'll look to see a bit more translatability in this game, see if there's a bit more to like for the 2024 NHL draft and for his pro hopes. But in terms of the player he is right now, I think he has a chance to dominate at this tournament. So that's it for our second segment. We'll get into our third, where we look at Slovakia and the other teams in the tournament and their players to look for at the U18 World Championships. We'll get into that in just a second, just before a quick word from our sponsors at Monopoly Go. We've all been there either as a player or a fan. It's the second intermission and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low. You're not sure how your team can pull out a win and turn things around. And that's when you dig deep. That's when you lift your head up and you say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game, to pull off some bank heists and to take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There is so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. You can make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. And you can charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests in tournaments, to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Alrighty, so last but not least, we'll be looking at some other players in this tournament that are worth looking at the U18 World Championship. We'll start off with Slovakia, who's got some interesting prospects, but has definitely taken a step down since the recent years of Juraj Slafkovsky and Filip Mešar and Simon Nemec. There's been a different step down, but speaking of Simon Nemec, his younger brother, Adam Nemec, is going to be at this tournament. He's a 2026 NHL draft eligible, and he's been looking great in season so far in Slovakia. He's even played a couple games of pro hockey as a 16-year-old, I believe, which is quite surprising. But he's been well above a point per game at pretty much every level so far this year. Been looking fantastic. Just a dynamic, skilled, creative player. Really good at shifting defenses and finding little breaches to exploit. This is something that I've really noticed in this game. The few games I've watched of his, but yeah, I'm definitely looking to see how he competes at this tournament because he's got a chance to be a standout for Slovakia. And I think Slovakia is going to need to rely a lot on their underage players in order to make a splash because their 17, 18-year-old group this year is decent but not overwhelming. Speaking of which, Miroslav Satan Jr. That's right. Miroslav Satan's son is going to be at this tournament. He's a 2024 NHL draft eligible, but he's nothing really to write home about in terms of skills. But what really stands out is the fact that he's 6'7" and 190 pounds. He is a big boy. And he's got a chance to dominate physically, to win board battles along the boards. He's probably going to be playing in the middle six, especially if the underage players take a jump up and take control of this team. I think that Satan Jr. has a chance to be a really good, steady middle six presence. Who's going to bring physicality. Who's going to bring some, a relative amount of offense, especially with the fact that you just can't push him off pucks, especially if you're a 16, 17-year-old defenseman coming up against him. It's going to be really difficult. But yeah, he's a very interesting name to watch, and I'll be curious to see how he performs at this tournament. And last but not least for Slovakia, I want to highlight Luka Radivojevic, who for me is probably going to be the best player for Slovakia in this tournament. He was fantastic at the World Juniors. I was really impressed, even though he was only playing in a bottom pair role for Slovakia. I was so impressed with his ability to break out the puck, to make plays in transition, to just do a lot with the puck that you're surprised to see. He's got a surprising level of composure for a player who's only eligible for the 2025 NHL draft and was facing 19, 20-year-olds at the World Juniors. He was really impressive to me, and I'm excited to see how he does against this kind of lower level of competition, against his own age group, more or less. But even then, he's going to be playing against older players than him. So he's a player who's constantly been playing above his age group. Just a really good mobile player, an undersized right-handed defenseman who's been producing really well so far in the Swedish Hockey League. He's played actually 6 games of pro hockey in the SHL, but has mainly been playing at the junior level and has 33 points in 43 games from the blue line for Örebro and at the J20. And that's it for Slovakia. We'll get into the other players to watch for the other teams. Here we're talking about Switzerland, Norway, Latvia, and I'm missing one there, Kazakhstan. That's right. Kazakhstan is back in this tournament. But to start off with Switzerland, there are two major standouts. They're quite obvious, going to be Leon Muggli and Daniil Ustinkov. These are two left-handed defensemen that are eligible for the 2024 NHL draft, and both are quite high on a lot of rankings, especially Leon Muggli. He's showed up in a couple of top 30s, top 20s. He's a pretty interesting case. I'm not really sold on his first-round value, but this is a really smart defenseman, a defenseman who's quickly earned himself top pair and top four responsibilities on a Swiss Hockey League team, a Swiss National League team, at the pro level, which isn't easy because a lot of former NHLers and players who couldn't be playing in the NHL play in those leagues. And yeah, Muggli has been looking quite good against that competition, decent production as well. I just don't really see any standout skill, but again, he just thinks the game at such a high level and defends really well, which makes him quite interesting. He's a pretty average size at about 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's a left shot defenseman. And it's quite the same in terms of frame for Daniil Ustinkov. He's listed as a bit bigger, but I'm not sold on that. I think they're about the same size and weight. With Daniil Ustinkov, you've got a bit more upside. I see a bit more in his playmaking ability, his ability to make a breakout pass, his ability to carry pucks through lines. He's a quite good player on the puck, but he's a definite step down on Muggli in terms of his overall processing of the defensive game. I think the defensive upside is also higher with Ustinkov, given the raw kind of athletic ability that he has. But Muggli is just a lot more safe, a lot more stable, a lot more reliable, and a lot more trustable, clearly, since he's beginning top 4 minutes in the Swiss National League, which is absurd. Moving on, for Norway, I want to highlight Mikkel Eriksson. He's a 2025 NHL draft eligible. And he's been putting up 2 points per game at the U18 region level in Sweden, which is, I think, the second division of U18 competition in Sweden there. And he's also above 2 points per game in the Norwegian under-20 league, which is, I mean, it's not the highest level of competition, but the production so far has been great. He's also played some pro hockey this year, which is quite impressive for a 16, 17-year-old. He plays forward, and he's going to be really interesting to watch at this tournament. Also, for Latvia, moving on here, we've got Olivers Mornieks, and he's probably not going to be playing a lot, but this is one of only two 15-year-olds at this tournament. And he's going to be playing for Latvia in this tourney. He's going to be really interesting to watch. He's a 2026 NHL draft eligible, one of the younger players eligible for the 2026 NHL draft. He's been looking fairly good. I mean, he's put up some decent points so far in the leagues that he's played in. He's almost a point per game so far against men in Latvia as a 15-year-old, which is just, I mean, again, not the highest level of competition, but quite absurd in terms of production still, playing against men as a 15-year-old. So yeah, I'm also interested to watch him at this tournament. But that wraps things up for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. And leave us a rate and review. It helps the channel out a lot. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today to get all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our future shows as we head into our coverage for the month of May. Continue our coverage of the U18 World to keep you up to date on that, and a lot more. This has been Hadi, usually with Sebastian High, and we hope you tune in next time.